Dear friends, I hope that you're all doing well and that you're all safe and taking care of yourselves. Make sure to stay safe, make sure to wash your hands. Just please be sure if you're vulnerable to stay where you are. I know it's a difficult thing to do, and I know we all want to get out and be in control of our lives, but this is an incredibly difficult moment, and we can all get through it, but we can only get through it if we keep to the rules. So I'm begging you and I'm asking you to take care of yourselves, because you all matter so much to me. When I talk to people about what's going on through this pandemic, there are two words which are used. One is crazy, and the second one is scary. I've spoken to some people who are veterans of the Second World War, who'd either fought or experienced it, and they told me that this in some ways is actually even more frightening than the Second World War. Because if you think about the Blitzkrieg and you think about the bombing of London, people knew who the enemy was. They knew that they were their enemies and that they were out to get them, and they knew who to defend themselves from. However, we have an enemy who's far more insidious. Things are far more uncertain here. And that's because we are not facing a known enemy. We are facing a virus that could literally be anywhere. It spreads through the air, through things which are touched, and no one can see it and point to it and say, that's the enemy. The virus doesn't have a cause or a reason for doing what it's doing. It attacks indiscriminately, the young and the old. The challenge of dealing with this fear is something that we are all dealing with. Rav Nachman from Breslov, one of the great Hasidic masters, compared this world to a very, very narrow bridge. And he said that wherever we go, whatever we do through our lives, we're constantly walking on this bridge. One false step, and like that tightrope walker, we will fall. One moment when we stop focusing our eyes on the route before us, and we will slip. There are so many things that challenge us. And Rav Nachman of Breslov said that the greatest thing to be careful about, the greatest element that we need to make sure that we overcome, is our fear. V'ha'ikar lo lefached klal. The main purpose, says Rav Nachman, is not ever to be afraid. This intense emotion of fear can be completely paralyzing. It makes us more primitive, because all we can focus ourselves on is how to escape what is attacking us and how to run away rather than facing our fears. Fear prevents us from being rational, from thinking carefully about the reality of our situations and about creating scenarios in our heads which are imaginings rather than the reality that we have in front of us. That's all very well, you say, or you might say, but how do we move beyond our fears? How do we stop feeling scared during this stressful moment in our lives? It's important to look at what the sages say about dealing with fear, and perhaps this will help us in our everyday life to deal with our own. It's interesting that if you look in the dictionary, you'll find the antonym or the opposite of fear is confidence. However, we see another language being used by our sages of blessed memory. When Shabbos goes out, we recite Havdalah, which separates between the holiness of Shabbos and the rest of the week. The first thing that we say is, Hinei El Yeshuasi, God is my salvation. Eftach, I will trust in him. Velo efchad, and I will not be frightened. We see over here that the opposite of fear is not confidence. The opposite of fear is bitachon, is faith. Having the trust or faith means that I know that God is taking care of me right here, right now. The word for faith has the same root in Hebrew as security in Hebrew. Boter comes from the word bitachon, which means security. It means that I know that I am protected. The reason that we feel we are protected is because we know that God is looking down on us and is ensuring that He's taking care of us. Yes, there is a lot to be frightened of during this day and age, but we need to know, we need to feel in our heart of hearts that the Almighty knows the best for us and He will protect us as an eagle protects her young. We end Shabbos off with these words, Eftach v'lo efchad, I will trust in God and I will not be frightened. Because Shabbos is a moment in our lives when we feel God more in it. He is there because we create the space for the Almighty to be there every single Shabbos. That's what it's all about, creating space for spirituality in our lives. When the Shabbos starts to leave us, we remind ourselves that the protection that God has for every single one of us, when His presence is more hidden from our lives, is still there. Eftach, I will trust, v'lo efchad, and I will not be frightened. We are facing an unprecedented opportunity in our lives to develop the sense of faith, of bitachon, in the Almighty. We are frightened. I'm frightened. We are all frightened. But we can find security and safety knowing that God is with us. He is our security blanket. He is our security force. There are ways in which we can develop that bitachon and that faith. And the first thing that we can do every single morning is to say, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. To know that God is one. To understand that God is all around us in all the four directions of the world. And as the Kabbalists say, Leis makom panui mine, there is not one little space in the entire universe which is empty of godliness in this world. He is there. We just need to find that awareness of Him in this world. We can do this by reading the Psalms of David, seeing how God takes care of His people through thick and thin, through the difficult times, through the arrow by day and through the darkness by night. We can increase faith by celebrating each moment of our lives. If we are alive, God must have a purpose for you. He must have a purpose for me. That purpose is out there, and only you and I can fulfill our unique missions. If we are in this world, we are there to spread that spirituality, that light, that bitachon, that faith with whomever we see and whoever we experience and touch in our personal lives. We need to find that faith and to harness it and to share it. And in that way, our fear will fall away. I wish you all a very warm and safe good Shabbos.